Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined as always by Nate. He's on the East Coast, and we are looking at a Wednesday slate. Finally get some games here in the NBA after that big Monday slate. Small on Tuesday, although it was a fun matchup there between the last two MVPs in Embiid and Jokic. We've got 10 games here on Wednesday for you that we're looking at. We've got best bets in this video, and we've also got playa props up in a different video. So make sure you are subscribed to that page, like these videos, and continue to follow along all season with us. Also want you to head to thelines.com and use everything we've got up on the website right now, including that odds finder tool that we can use to make sure you're getting the best juice and odds available to you from these books giving us bets this season. Nate, let's go ahead and get into your first NBA best bet, an interesting game between the Heat and the Raptors. And after staying away from the Heat, we are repeatedly coming back to them.
I am riding the Heat. Yeah, I think it's a new season. It's a new day. They have better depth, and they have Jimmy Butler back. Whereas, what do the Raptors have? They have no Jakob Poeltl, which has been a big issue for them. And
True.
So -1.5 or -2 is what you can get Miami at here on the road, which, by the way, they've won 8 of their last 11 road games when they have Jimmy Butler. They're 15-10 on the season with him. They're 19-11 when they have Bam. I don't know what they are when they have both. Maybe like 2-0 because it barely ever happens. But, Bam obviously locks down that defense, and that's been their key to success, going 4-1 in their last 5 here. Number 1 3-point defense, number 2 free throws allowed, 5th fewest assists, 3rd fewest fast break points. Key against Toronto, which struggles in the half court, even after getting Emmanuel Quickly here. I mean, in their last 4, it's been the defense that's been the biggest issue because Poeltl's been out. But yeah, Quickly, the shine wearing off a little bit here, and without Quickly, when these teams met a month ago, Toronto was held to just 37 points in the second half at home, and the Heat rolled. Without Bam, they held Toronto to just 103 points. So now they have Bam in there. Obviously, a huge impact. Toronto just doesn't really win when they're dogs. 16-18 this season, including 2-5 as home dogs. 29% win rate when you include last season as dogs, and 3-6 against the spread their last 9 home games. Even getting Quickly in there at some point, but with IQ and RJ in there now, they're a little more, dangerous from the 3-point line. But like I just laid out, that's not really happening against the Heat. They're still depending on a lot going to the basket with Siakam and Barnes, and that's not happening when you have Bam back there. So I just trust the Heat defense to keep this close, and then Jimmy to be able to close it out. I didn't even mention Lowry, Hero. They're all going to be available. Just Jaquez is the only guy they're really missing here, but this is pretty much full strength Heat.
Yeah, I agree. That's kind of what I keep coming back to as well. I was trying to look at a total for this game. I really thought there was a live, an over was really live in this one, and the Heat don't score on the road. The Raptors haven't scored even with this iteration of their team. They've only averaged 109 points per game at home versus the torrid pace that they're playing with on the road. I think Bam is definitely good for some props. They're a bit high because he's not going to have much in the way of any opposition, right? Like you said, Poeltl is very important to this team. I was really enjoying taking his prop overs because he gets so many good looks at the rim now that there's actual, speed on offense a little bit more so than there used to be in Toronto. But the shine for Quickly, I don't know if it's wearing off. I think it's just what it is now. I think it's 18.5 points is his prop, and that's what it will be. And it's based on a lot of volume and him being the one that pushes the pace. But I would agree the Heat are good at -1.5 here. They did surprise us by getting beat by the Nets the other day, right? Without people, and that's a situation that we'll monitor for them. I love them as dogs, don't love them as much as favorites, but they are on the road in a situation that it'll be a little bit difficult. So yeah, small favorites. I'll ride with you on the Heat because you are the Heat whisperer right now too. So let me go to the best team in the NBA, Nate. Shame on us for barely talking about them, other than when you wisely keep taking Colin Sexton props. We haven't talked about the Jazz enough. So I'm going to take their team total over 123.5 on DraftKings. As I take a sip of water, because they're playing the Dubs. The only thing that scares you about this bet is Draymond being back. Maybe that makes a difference, right? On the season, they've allowed 115 a game with him, 118 without him. We'll see what that really translates to in Utah, where they just go bonkers in Utah, right? They play at the third fastest pace at home. They've won 15 of their last 20 overall. They've won 9 in a row at home. The last time they lost at home was on December 8th to the probably the second best team in the NBA after them in the Clippers at the time, which was a tough matchup for them. But now they've, fully healthy, everybody back. That's really been the case for them, is that they've Will Hardy's had his sort of pick of the lineup, which is really helpful. Like, he hasn't even really used Walker Kessler. They're going completely small at this point, predominantly. Kessler's barely getting 20 minutes, if he does get that amount over the course of this win streak. Because, like I said, they're playing a lot of Lowry Markkanen, Sexton, Clarkson, and they're just insanely efficient. Like, a lot of guys outside of Markkanen are getting 20 minutes. He's really one of the only guys getting up above 30 minutes. Even Clarkson has been slightly below 30 minutes in the last bunch of games, partly also because they're blowing teams out, by the way. But it's also just because like I said, he's able to keep that pace up and run teams out of the gym. And I would expect that in this one. I think the Dubs are liable to come along for the ride. I just don't know for sure, to be honest, with the way that their offense has been up and down. They have been scoring a ton more points recently. The game's averaging like 120, 119 in that range for, so like about 240, 239, honestly, in that range for their games. Even with Draymond back the other day in a game against Memphis, they only scored 107. They gave up 116 to the Memphis Grizzlies. I'm sorry, I don't even think that. What's Memphis's G League team? That's who they gave it up to, right? Like, there was barely any starters in that game. So now you've got the offense that is humming the best at home has gone over in the 7 of those 10 games that they won, or 9 games that they've won in a row at home. And the last thing I'll say is, like, both of these teams are shooting a ton of threes, not defending the 3-point line nearly as well as they're defending other parts of the court. And the Warriors are going to keep fouling. We're going to see a lot of free throws for the Jazz, who have the 4th best free throw rate at home. The Dubs are giving up the most free throws per game when they play on the road. It's a problem they've had for a long time about just fouling because they're so small and unable to stop guys going to the rim. So Colin Sexton, I would love to take his props in this one. They're at about 19 and a half. It just scares me that the dude gets 23 minutes, even though he's averaging about 20 points in 23 minutes in his last 10 games. That's just such an insane efficiency that it scares me to take that kind of prop with him, but he's going to the free throw line this game for sure.
Can you just take Jazz minus 3.5 at this point? I mean, yeah. Can I make that half your pick here? Because you're talking about how much they're going to score, and the Warriors, their road struggle is probably going to continue a little bit. I mean, Draymond back for one game, but like you said, lost to the Grizzlies without any starters. Draymond not able to really plug those holes, and then everybody else, dropping points and beating them by double digits, home or away, basically. Just that weird win at the Bulls and then beating the Pistons recently in their game log. So
yep, and they wouldn't have won that game in Chicago if they didn't boo that poor widow. So,
anyways, moving on to another team that's great to fade, the Charlotte Hornets. At New Orleans. Pelicans are back home after a 5-game road trip here, and I expect their defense to show up and just kind of control this game. Hold the Hornets under 108.5, which is where they're at. No Gordon Hayward, no Mark Williams. Brandon Miller is questionable. LaMelo Ball has been back for 2, but the Hornets still only getting 93 points per game in that span, playing at a pretty slow pace. And LaMelo's return might contribute to Rozier suddenly going cold. 21 points per game on 38% shooting, volume shooter, but really inefficient. And his last 3 against Nola, Rozier getting 19 a game on 38% shooting. Hornets only able to score 102 a game without Gordo in the last 2 seasons here. And I mean, maybe this is more about the Pelicans though. Like, they're coming off a loss in Dallas to end that road trip. And after a loss this season, they're first of all 9-6-1 against the spread, so they probably are going to handle business. The spread's crept up to 12 points, but I'm not sure how consistent their offense is. I just know their defense will come with it. After a loss, they've held opponents to 108 or fewer in 5 of their last 6. The only exception was overtime. They held Memphis to 103 in regulation, so basically make it 6 for 6 in terms of coming back and locking it down. And they play really slow lately. I mean, their last 8 is a 93 pace, and they've gone under in 5 of their last 7 at home with the second best defensive rating in the NBA during that span. Even on this road trip, right, you saw them stomp the Kings and the Warriors, hold them to 105 or fewer. And this Hornets offense is just not a professional offense. I mean, you got LaMelo back out there, but he's a distributor at heart. Like he's not supposed to shoot the ball 30 times, and maybe Rozier was having some success being the guy that's going to shoot the ball 25 times. But now it's just kind of a weird herky-jerky situation where both of them are just taking bad ISO shots, and there's no flow to anything, and the Hornets are probably the worst offense in the league at this point.
Yeah, there's some teams that want to argue with that. I mean, the Memphis is definitely leading the tankathon right now with the amount of injuries that they have. So, yeah, either way, I didn't know really how to attack this game. The Hornets, sure, yeah, they're not far behind in the tankathon. Let's put it that way, and I do believe they have a slightly worse record. So, let me go ahead and close out best bets with the Atlanta and Orlando game. It's in Atlanta. And it might be scary, but I'm taking an under, and it's for Orlando's team total, 113.5. I'm not really, this has nothing to do with Atlanta's defense. I don't plan on throwing out any sort of defensive metrics for Atlanta that will indicate that they're going to shut anybody down specifically, but I do see Orlando prioritizing defense the way they did last game. And we're going to have basically the same iteration of last game again, but it's just in Atlanta now. And I do believe we have Markelle Fultz back, which helps slow things down as opposed to Cole Anthony playing a ton of point guard and getting all those starter minutes. So that's, yeah. And then also Goga Batadze getting a bit more minutes than Mo Wagner, which also slows things down because he's in there to guard Clint Capella. And really those two guys have banged against each other pretty well last time. So the 113 for them, there's no Franz. Like it's very interesting. If you look at the game log, the 3 games prior to the last game that they played on January 7th, these teams went well over this total on all 3 and played at an average pace of about 102. But that's with Franz. There's not enough offense now for Orlando. So you've seen them go even choppier and slower than they were earlier in the season once they lost Franz. They had that one game where they shot 47% from 3 against Denver. That was how they won that game and shocked the Nuggets. And then the next, the other games after that, everything has just been super slow, super under. They, like I said, they went over twice since when he went down. The other game was not this one. In this one, they were going well under. The Magic ended up getting 117 because they went to overtime, and that was it, right? And there was like 14 points in overtime, and Paolo did whatever he wanted there, and that's how they ended up getting there. But it was like 105 going into the OT. So that game played at a 95 pace is indicative of what Orlando's been doing since Franz went down, slowing it down to about a 95 pace per game over the last 7 since that time. Now, Atlanta's playing at the fastest pace, but they've also had a decent amount of unders recently. If you look at their game log, which is really interesting, especially that one against the Spurs the other day where they looked like they were going to score 140 and then just stopped, and we're at about 105 when all was said and done. Took some starters out, obviously, but this defense for Orlando, obviously, on the other end of the spectrum from San Antonio. I don't need to specify that too much, but I think without like outlier crazy 3-point shooting near 50% like they had against Denver, this Orlando team doesn't have multiple ways to score. There are no real plays in these sets. It's Paolo go. It's a lot of the similar stuff that like Luka does, but Paolo ain't Luka, and he doesn't even have the weapons around him. So yeah, I think the 114 is going to be too tough for them. We'll go under for their team total.
Yeah, I think that's the key is that Paolo now as the number one and only option offensively has led to Orlando's offense just completely going in the tank. Like they had an initial lift where he was just able to have great games, including that Atlanta game. But now, under his prop in 4 straight, I will throw out this bonus bet of under 27.5 points for him, which is still very high in the Hawks to win the game. That gave you like plus 130, plus 150. That's hit twice that we picked it against the Wolves and the Heat. I know it's scarier with this Hawks defense, especially because you saw Paolo drop 35 against him, but it's exactly what you're saying. Like teams are just daring these outside shooters to hit a shot and doubling Paolo, and he's only got 19 attempts in his last 2 games because the Knicks and the Thunder were like, yeah, kick it out. And like huge amounts of potential assists, but nothing going down. Magic averaging 98 points per game in these 96 points per game in those 4. So yeah. I think the Hawks will win. And, their defense has been better of late, like you're saying.
Yeah, better, not great. But yeah, no, all of that is correct. And like you said, if you're taking an under for Paolo, you might as well parlay it with the money line for Atlanta because there's just not a world where Orlando wins this game and Paolo doesn't, have a very, very good game. So That is all the time we have for you in Best Bets. Continue to follow along, subscribe to that page, and check out those playa props that we have for you as well. Until we see you next, happy betting.